What is up, everyone? If this is your first time joining our show, welcome to Third Shot Podcast. If you're a repeat listener, thank you so much for your continued support and welcome back. Also, don't forget to subscribe or follow our show on your favorite podcast platform. And while you're there, do us a favor and give us a rating, 5 stars, and maybe a comment too. We'd love to see it. I'm
Five
here
stars.
with
5 stars. 5 stars.
I'm here with Uncle Greg, and we're ready for a shot.
Cheers, Richie.
Glass up.
Good seeing you.
Good to see you too. My favorite time of the week.
I know. How have you been playing?
Doing great. Gotten some fun matches in. I dragged my mom out to the court recently, and we challenged this man and his son who was like 8 or 10 years old, I think. And it
Okay.
was so much fun because my mom, she doesn't play very often, but she's a lot of fun to hang out with and play with. And she just brings that pickleball spirit. She's like dancing around and joking. And she was doing that, like, you're dead to the other team, when you
Oh,
like
man.
drag your thumb across your neck as a joke. And the kid was just like having a good time. He thought she was hilarious.
I would love to see a little 10-year-old trash talking your mom. That would be perfect.
They were, going at it.
We were going- Well, your mom is super athletic too.
She
Like
is,
you got
yes.
good athletic genes in you because she can run, she covers court, she's strong, she can drive it. She's fun to play with.
She's a lot of fun when I finally get her out there.
And
Have
the
you been
best
playing
part about
recent?
it is laughing. I love playing
Yes.
with her because there's always going to be laughs on the court with your mom.
Oh my gosh, you are not kidding. Like, it was nonstop, just like giggling the whole time. If you want to work out your abs as you play, laughing is the best way to do that.
Okay, I want to ask you a question about working out your abs. Does coughing or sneezing when I have like a sneeze attack and I can't stop because of allergies or whatever, I feel like my abs have worked out for like I've done 1,000 crunches.
That's hilarious. I don't know if I've sneezed that much. Or
Does it
maybe mine are
really
just
happen that
too
way? I
weak.
don't know if it does or not.
Oh, but coughing, when I've been sick and I've been coughing for a few days, at the end of it, like, it does feel kind of sore.
Right? Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think it's
it is
the
sore.
contraction of the muscles when it's like your whole body's convulsing when you have a big sneeze or a big cough. And if it's over and over and over again, I'm like, oh, it's got to be working something. I'm just looking for the positive out of allergies.
Exactly. It's just a small workout throughout the day.
Exactly. It's perfect.
So, have you been playing recently too?
I have been playing. I have been playing. I cannot say that my last trip or my last match or two matches actually was as much fun as playing with you and your mom, though.
It's hard to beat.
It is hard to beat. But okay, so let me tell you the quick story. So I was playing with a group of people and they were all Duper players, right? They all have a Duper account and stuff. So we decided, okay, let's have some Duper matches and let's post some scores because we all want to kind of get our rating, up and or
Yeah.
not up, but more accurate and have more matches. So we played in a bunch of matches and we kind of rotated around, had different partners and that type of thing. And it wasn't an official Duper event. So, one of the people said that they were going to do the self posting of the scores. And later that night, I got a notice and said, okay, you need to validate your scores. And I was looking through the multiple matches we played, and they all looked kind of good. And then the last two that got posted were matches that I never played in. I'm like, okay, I never partnered with this person against those two people. And
Yeah.
there were two matches against the same two people with me as the same partner. And we never played those people. And it showed that I lost both of those matches. Now, I lose a lot of matches, so it's not like winning or losing, but the fact that it never happened and that could obviously lower my rating. And whether my rating is lower or higher, that's not the point. It's just not accurate.
Right. So
So
I'm not super familiar with Duper because the last time I tried, Vegas wasn't offering many Duper events. So I haven't gotten into it. But when they post the scores, is there something that you have to input as well, or is it an external person inputting them? How does that work?
when it's not an official duper event and to like self post, then one team has to post the scores and it goes to the other team, and one of the other team members has to validate it. Okay, so I
Mm,
haven't validated it because obviously it didn't happen, so I don't want to validate it. Actually, this is a great question. I have no idea exactly what I'm supposed to do. So maybe our listeners, please help us with this. Go to one of our social medias or our email us and tell me what am I supposed to do, because there's these two matches that are floating on Duper right now waiting for me to validate, and I don't want to do it. Is there a way to delete it, or is there a way to dispute it? I don't know what to do. I've never had this happen before.
yeah, please share some information because that's good knowledge to have. And you absolutely should not validate it if it didn't even
It
happen at
may
all.
Yeah, yeah. So I did reach out to one of the people that I supposedly played that I never played against, and he was saying, "Yeah, you should be able to delete it. Let me look into it." And then I didn't hear back, and then he said that the person that he was matched up with in the match, she didn't post it either. So now I'm wondering who actually even posted these scores. Like,
Yes, and
so that's another question for our audience. Is it even possible that nobody that is in the four people that are supposedly played in this match could post scores? Like, I've never heard
hmm.
that happen before either. Is that possible?
Yeah, because then just random internet trolls can go into Duper and just start inputting like non-existing scores and having fake games and just kind of messing up everybody's scores.
I mean, I'm guessing if you just don't validate it, it'll never go against you or for you. But I don't know. It's just weird. I
But
don't
then
want to
it'll
see.
still count though for the person whoever's account did post it though, right?
I don't think it counts until it gets validated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it counts until it gets validated, but I don't want to like be floating out there and going, "Oh, he's just not validating because he lost," and he won't admit to losing. I'm like, no,
Oh
that's not it at
no.
all. I just want it to be accurate.
Yeah, that's a sticky situation and you don't want to ruffle any feathers with the people that you're playing with.
Right,
So how do
right.
you fix this?
Yeah. So, audience, please reach out to us and help me figure this out. Help Bridgie and I,
Yeah, Uncle
because
Greg
I
needs some
can't be the
advice.
only one this ever happened to, right? The other people, must have happened to, and please, there's got to be a way out of it, or a correction or something. But I'm
Yeah.
clueless. I'm clueless to this. I'm not. I don't have a lot of duper experience, and this is the first time something inaccurate has happened. So, please help.
Sending help. Well, that kind of leads me to a learning more question because Russ isn't with us today. So I'm going to fill in this week and ask you a learning more question.
Okay, I'm ready.
So, my question is, which paddle were you playing with in your duper event? Because I'd like an inside scoop. And then also, how do you determine which paddle you're going to use when you're going out to play like with friends or in a tournament? What are some things you're looking for?
Well, I think you and I are in a unique situation where we have a lot of paddles to choose from. We've been lucky enough where we've had a number of guests that are paddle manufacturers that we get to try their different paddles out. So first thing is I want to try a paddle out if we have an upcoming interview, and I want to make sure I get a lot of games in with their paddles so I can give an honest review of how their paddles perform for me. And that doesn't mean it's going to perform for everybody the same as it performed for me or you, right?
Right.
Even when you and I talk about the same paddle, we have different experiences. So the first thing I try to, decide is, okay, do I have an interview coming up, and what paddle are we interviewing about? Then the second thing is, if I've want to like really zero in on a certain aspect of my game, because each paddle kind of has its own little personality, and some of them are power paddles, some of them are more touch paddles, and that type of thing. So if I want to work on a certain part of my game that day, then I'll pick a paddle that will enhance that part of my game.
I see. Yeah.
Right. So today, for example, I really wanted to work on making solid contact, and we are going to talk to the owner and founder, Josh, of Five Shots Pickleball. And one of his paddles was absolutely perfect for me to take out and play with today, to work on making really solid contact and hitting the sweet spot each time.
Mm.
So yeah, so that's kind of what I work on, and I'm looking forward to having our audience meet Josh, because he has some fantastic paddles, and I can't wait to share that experience too.
Yeah, and you were saying that sometimes we don't have similar experiences with these paddles, but spoiler alert, this time around the paddle was solid.
Oh, yeah. Well, we actually tried out multiple paddles, and spoiler alert, there is one difference when people listen to the rest of this interview and get to meet Josh and we talk about paddles. We did have one different experience. So stay tuned and listen to how Bridgie and I played with the Five Shots Pickleball paddles.
Listen up, pickleball people. You can't slay on the court and look sloppy at the same time.
Thank goodness for Pickleball Athlete and their sweet styles.
Whether you want long sleeves, no sleeves, or funky and fun prints, Pickleball Athlete has got you covered.
Their selection is perfect for the super serious players or the jokers out there. And they don't just stop at clothes either.
Check out their awesome accessories that would make fabulous gifts for your favorite player. Or for yourself, let's be real.
And hey, you get to feel good about supporting a small business too. Find them at pickleballathlete.com.
Be sure to also follow on Facebook and Instagram.
Welcome back to Third Shot. We appreciate all the support that you've been showing us on our social media, on our website. We appreciate all the feedback that you're giving us, the comments on Instagram and Facebook, Twitter. Keep it coming. We love it. Bridgie and I are now very excited to have Josh Sitea, founder of Five Shots Pickleball, with us today. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Think we've got our shots ready to kick off the show?
Oh, yeah. Let's do this.
Yeah,
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
So before we get into this new paddle, Five Shots, we do like to hear your origin story and just kind of let us all know how you got involved in pickleball.
Right. No, I'm sure my story is very similar to a lot of other people's. I used to play tennis. I played it at a pretty good level, in high school, and then throughout my mid years, I played in a somewhat competitive environment. It just got hard to maintain as I got older. It was very hard on the knees, hard on the joints. Being in tennis shape is a very difficult thing to maintain. So much running around back and forth, side to side. So I kind of gave that up for a little bit. And my neighbor kept telling me that I had to play or try pickleball. And I put it off for a long time. And I think it was just the name of the sport that just stopped me from trying it. And no, I'm not going to try it. I'm not going to try it. And he finally got me out there. And to be honest with you, it was love at first game. I mean, I really felt something special playing the sport. And it was from that point on, I knew that this is going to be something I'm going to continue to be able to play for a while. The fact of the matter that I could swing as hard as I would like to, more control on the shot, and not run around as much is what initially drew me to it. And then it just progressed from there. So there was a lot to like about it.
Was it an easy transition for you because of your tennis background, or
Very
was
easy.
no?
No, it was very easy.
Oh, good, good.
The hardest thing was learning how, what box to serve in after 2P, 0-1, keeping score was the most difficult part of the whole thing for me. But actually playing the sport was it came pretty easily from a tennis background.
I got to ask you a question because you have a tennis background. Do you prefer playing singles or doubles now in pickleball?
I prefer singles, but I can only play for about an hour of singles, and then I get pretty tired. But I could play for 2 hours, 3 hours of doubles pretty easily. So it really comes down to stamina. I'm in my 50s now, believe it. So I just don't have the stamina I'd like. But if I'm going to go at it hard for an hour, singles is all I could do is an hour at singles.
Well, singles is very tough. And we had a guest on, she was a nutritionist and she tracks everything. And she was telling us that singles is such a great workout that in half the amount of time, she gets double the amount of steps
Yeah,
and calories.
I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, singles is where it's at if you're looking for a workout.
Right, right. But if you want to spend all afternoon hanging out and playing with friends, doubles is it's a safer way to go.
Oh, it's fun.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun. I also like the friendliness aspect of the sport. I mean, you walk on a tennis court sometimes. It seems a little competitive, a little territorial. But in pickleball, I've only received welcomings and smiles everywhere I went. I really feel like pickleball has a good vibe and a good community aspect to it. And I relate to that. I really do.
Yeah, we can't agree with you more about that. That's why Richie and I love it so much. It's more about the social and the vibe and the friends that we're, getting to meet and make. Why do you think in tennis it just doesn't have that? I know the distance, right? The court's bigger,
Right.
but I can't buy that. That's the only reason why that tennis is not as social as pickleball.
It probably has to do with the history of the sport. A lot of people played tennis younger. They might have been given tennis lessons. They might have been trained to think that way. Coaches, competitions, you're always me against the other person, the opponent. And pickleball, I feel, is more of an activity that people do to be social and to have fun. So it's just a different desired result. I mean, a lot of people play pickleball to be social. Most people I know who play tennis to win. I just don't think it's as social an understanding as pickleball is. But I
That's
could be wrong.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I never really thought about it because I didn't grow up playing tennis, so I didn't have much to compare it to, but it is definitely a very social and fun sport. So you've gone from being a tennis player to a pickleball addict like the rest of us, but what
Right.
inspired you to start your own paddle line?
Right. Well, that's people ask me that to this day, and sometimes I scratch my own head and ask myself, why did I do that? Um, to be honest with you, when I first started playing, I picked up maybe a $60 paddle at Dick's Sporting Good, just started whacking at it with that. And I realized the limitations of that paddle pretty quickly. So I got online and I wanted to look for a quality paddle that was made in the USA. I mean, it does matter to me. I try to buy USA when I can. Can't always, but I do my best. And I was really shocked to see that most of the paddles from outside or from the United States were minimum $150 to $250 was kind of the range. It just seemed a little excessive to me. So it got me thinking. I sort of have a quirky mindset, like, well, what does go into making a paddle? How complicated is this? And I watched a YouTube video from a guy in his garage, made his own paddle, and I'm like, wow, that doesn't sound too difficult. Let me try tinkering around and let me see what I could come up with. And that's really what got me going down the road. It started off as I was going to build a paddle for myself, my wife, maybe my neighbors. And then it grew into maybe I could actually build this into a company. That's a big jump. There's a lot of work between here and there. There's still a ton of work to do. But that sort of was the genesis of it, is that I was upset I couldn't find a quality paddle made in this country for under $150.
And do you think it's just because of labor costs, or, what is it that
Right.
makes it so expensive to, create and manufacture paddles here in the US?
And I'll answer this because I live this, so I can answer this with the full knowledge of having the right answer. It's very difficult to find manufacturing in America that will work in smaller quantities for startup companies. I would call up a factory in Arizona. I needed an end cap made, end caps. I don't know. I wanted 1,000 end caps. They had a minimum order quantity of like 50,000, right?
Wow.
I mean, the amount of, and I understand why the time it takes to shut down the line, to retool, to do this, the amount of time it takes, they need to do a larger run of the product, right? So that's cost effective for them. It just doesn't make sense for a company to make 100 or 200 or 300 pieces they need large order quantities. And as a new company, I'm not willing to do that. I don't need 5,000 of anything at this point. Maybe one day I will, knock on wood. Hopefully I'll get there. But now I'm dealing in the hundreds, not in the thousands. And it's hard to find US manufacturers willing to do those smaller order quantities of quality material.
That's interesting.
Now, I will say I've made, and this was surprising, I've made great relationships in China for products that I can't get in the US. And let me say in full disclosure, not 100% of my paddle is made in the US. I can't source every component of that paddle with US manufacturing. But the vast majority is made in the USA, and that allows me to claim made in the USA. Right? You can buy a car made in the USA, but it'll have some chips in there from Taiwan. The car's still made in the USA, even though a small percentage of the parts come from Taiwan. So my paddle is made in the USA, but there are some small components that I cannot get in the US as of yet, and I'm getting them from China.
Gotcha.
So full disclosure, we're striving to be 100% made in the USA, but we're not quite there yet. But
yeah, it definitely sounds like it's going to take some time to build up the quantity of what's required here in order to get that to happen.
Right. And that's sort of why. I mean, in California, the minimum wage is $15.50 an hour. You add that on top of, the cost of the goods and shipping. And before you know it, you do have a $250 paddle. And that's why I see why prices are where they are. But, our goal was really to try to build a paddle made in the USA for around $100. And that's really what we strive to do. And that's what we achieved.
That's great. So when you were building your own paddle, the first one, your homemade prototype of it, I guess you could say, where did you find all of the materials to build it?
Right. Great question. I went to a furniture manufacturer in Arizona that makes T molding, and that's the edge molding that we ended up using. I went to a plastic manufacturer to make end caps and foam. We actually used balsa wood in the beginning. Balsa wood we carved out or sanded balsa wood for the handles. Just whatever we could, we pieced it together. I ended up having to get my paddle blanks from China because I couldn't get a US manufacturer to supply me with paddle blanks. Because when you start a paddle company, that's probably the biggest decision you're going to make. How thick of a core am I going to use, and what's the material I'm going to use? You've got to test. You don't have to, but I tested 15 to 25 different paddle blanks before landing on what I felt hit the best and what I wanted to represent in the market. So there's a lot of testing that goes on. And it's relationships in China that actually allowed me to try different samples that I could end up narrowing down the search on.
As a business owner myself, I totally respect where you're coming from and what you're trying to, and what you are creating here with 5Shots. What was your background, and what did you take from your background that lent yourself to, being a successful business owner in the paddle companies?
Right. Well, my wife would say I've had a series of failures, and you learn something from every failure, right? Every company you start, even if it doesn't work out, you learn something from. I mean, bar none. My daughter broke her arm snowboarding one year at Park City, and it was the first day of a 7-day trip. And I was astounded when I went to the doctor there. They told me only 5 pounds of pressure on a bone of a little girl, and you could snap that bone in half. And I'm thinking that's just too little pressure. And all the jackets you wear when you're snowboarding, there's really no protection. So I started a company that produced a shirt that had padding that went all the way up the arms and over the ribs and around the collarbone area, so that when kids go skiing or skateboarding, they had protection over certain areas where they were prone to breakage. We called it exoshell, like the kids were going to wear an exoshell over their bones.
Yeah,
and it would protect them from those little 5-pound breaks that everyone seems to get when they're a kid, you know. So I've dabbled in these things for a long time. I've figured out different ways to solve different manufacturing problems, how to work with vendors, how to trademark a product, how to do advertising, things of that nature. So even though that company didn't really work out the way I wanted it to, you learn things from that process. You take that to the next venture. So my long answer to your short question is, you learn something along the way from everything you do, and hopefully at one point it works for you.
Well, that sounds like a really great idea, the EXO shirt. I could have benefited from that, I think. As a young one, I had so many broken bones, but what a great idea. And the fact that you've gotten some business experience, entrepreneurial experience, and you're able to apply it now,
right?
You know, that just goes to show how great Five Shots is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into creating a company and building a brand and manufacturing in mass, right? It's one thing to make a paddle. It's another thing to make hundreds of paddles at the same quality level, you know, the same quality control. So that's, you know, supply chain issues and managing that process is a job all unto itself. So it's an endeavor. It really is.
Well, let's get into those paddles because we're excited to talk about them. But before we do, the big tease, we got to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more with Josh about the Five Shots paddle.
It's Bridgie and Uncle Greg with Third Shot Podcast. We're looking for our next tournament.
We really love sharing our experiences playing tournaments as a fun part of our Third Shot Podcast journey.
We've been fortunate enough to be invited to play in a number of tournaments and broadcast live from the events.
So share your event with us and we can get the word out to our pickleball community. It's all about helping and growing the sport we love.
And we're hoping we'll get to meet you there. Welcome back to Third Shot Podcast, and don't forget to subscribe or follow our show on your favorite podcast platform, and follow us on social media, Instagram or Facebook at Third Shot Podcast. We're also on Twitter at Third Shot Pod. Today we are joined by the founder and owner of Five Shots Pickleball, Josh. Welcome back, Josh.
Hi, how are you?
Good. We've got our third shot ready. This is our favorite one of the show.
Oh,
I think it's cool that we're doing a third shot to Five Shots.
Great.
As long as you don't get to 5, I'm okay.
I love. Well, we might have to do another show to get to 5. We'll do it. Well, let's talk about these paddles because they are special. Tell us, I mean, obviously we got into they're made in the USA, but tell people the specs of these paddles and what you're proud of with the different lines you have.
Right. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, I tested many different paddle blanks, cores, materials, and thicknesses before I settled on what I did. I kind of feel like I'm more of a power player, so I like a paddle with a little more pop on it. So what I found is I ended up going with a little bit thinner of a core. And then instead of having a carbon fiber weave, I wanted a composite carbon fiber. And I don't know, I actually brought a blank with me. I don't know if I could use props on the podcast.
We can see it.
You can see, right? This is a carbon fiber blank. This is a composite smooth face paddle like I use at Five Shots. All right. It's very smooth. It has no ridges and it's not woven. Okay. As compared to a Torre carbon fiber where you could actually feel the grit, the surface on the carbon fiber. Right. So when you're looking for a powerful shot, physics will tell you that when the ball makes contact with the paddle face, the smoother or the more surface area the ball's going to hit, the more pop you're going to get off the face. So when you're dealing with a weave like this, when the ball hits it, it's hitting it at different angles, right? Mm-hmm. The ball doesn't hit it flush. The ball's hitting little bumps and ridges. It's hitting texture, right? So when it comes off the face of the paddle, the paddle's absorbing energy of the ball because it's not a smooth finish. It's textured. So I decided I liked the play of a smooth paddle face because it didn't absorb as much energy and the ball popped off the face. Mm-hmm. So then the problem is, well, if you have a smooth carbon fiber face, how do you control it? How do you spin? And that's where I found this manufacturer in Pennsylvania that came up with this high-tack surface layer that goes on top of this surface that has the grit and the granular texture to create the spin, okay, and the grit. So what we tested and what we liked the most was a smooth surface carbon fiber with a grit layer attached to it. And we did a thinner core, which is 12.75 millimeter. I know a lot of people like playing with a thicker paddle, but we didn't. I mean, honestly, and I don't think most people can honestly tell you the difference between a 13 millimeter and a 14 millimeter paddle when they're hitting it. That's just me. But I feel like the thinner paddle gave a little more power control. The grit layer that we put on top provided the spin and the texture that you need to control. So I felt like we had the best of both worlds there.
I see. That makes sense. And, I never really even thought what the core looked like would even play as big of a part of the power behind your stroke, essentially.
Yeah.
And I was able to feel that, though. That was one of the things that I liked about playing your paddle was I'm typically not like a banger or a power hitter or anything like that. But when I was playing with your paddle, I did feel it come off a lot better, and I was able to hit some really great shots. And my friend that I normally play with, Francine, she's the one that I actually started playing pickleball with. I had her try it out too, and she was like, oh man, I really love the sweet spot on this one. And she felt the same thing where her hits were a lot stronger and a lot faster. So she actually put up some stiff competition. We were playing singles.
That's great to hear. I mean, one of the things I'll mention, this is one of our paddles here, but one of the things I wanted to mention is the throat area here on our paddle is a little wider than other paddles, and that increases the sweet spot by just a little bit. So it's a little wider in the throat, which makes it a little stronger, more durable, but also increases the sweet spot a little further so that you're able to get what we felt were better hits off the paddle. So this shape of this is just a little wider in the throat than most, and we found that added a little bit more to the sweet spot and the strength of the paddle.
And is that technology built into both the Pro Series and the Pro-Am Series?
Well, the Pro Series was made strictly for people with who want two-handed backhands.
Right.
I really, even though I hit a lot with the one-handed, I don't feel as comfortable with the backhand until I have both hands on the paddle and I'm coming through. It just feels more comfortable for me to do a two-handed. So what we ended up doing is we kept these because you have to keep the paddle certain dimensions to be USA approved, right? USA Pickleball approved. You can't exceed 24 inches in total directions. So what we ended up doing is making the paddle a little narrower here, but keeping it wide at the throat. So it's got a custom shape to it with the almost 6-inch long handle. So yes, to answer your question directly, we did keep the throat a little wider here, but we do lose a little surface area on the face because we're making up for it with the longer handle, and that's that's sort of what we did with the Pro Series. It was really designed strictly for those who like a two-handed backhand. And there's plenty of them out there. There's a lot of people who like that two-handed shot.
I've noticed that, and I've been trying it out myself because I didn't know what I was doing with my backhand. So I was like, maybe this two-handed one would help give me a little bit more like guidance or direction with it.
Right.
So, Uncle, you've also had a chance to play with him as well. What were your thoughts on it?
I love the Pro Series paddle. Okay, and I'm not a two-handed backhand player, but the sweet spot, even though you said the surface area is a little smaller,
right,
the sweet spot's almost the entire paddle. Like there wasn't, you know how you test the edges, you bounce a ball and you're kind of testing the edges, stuff like that. I felt like almost the entire paddle was a sweet spot. And with the smaller surface, I felt super fast with it. Like, so I went to where I practice against a wall and I was just doing, speed drills with it. And it was noticeable for me how much quicker I was doing my speed drills with that Pro Series paddle than I was with other paddles that I've, practiced with. So, and then I took it out then I took it out to the court. And to Bridgie's point, the power that I got with it, it was effortless and the ball was coming off hotter than other paddles that I have. And it did not sacrifice spin like you were saying, Josh. I was still able to spin it. And then I went to the Pro-Am series paddle. And because it had a larger surface area, it seemed like every shot I hit was in the middle because I was used to playing with the smaller surface area. So it was a perfect transition for me. And then I just started drilling the Pro-Am. But my personal preference was because I love the design of your Pro Series and I love the sweet spot of that Pro Series. I could see myself playing that a lot.
Well, you noticed you did bring up the grip at one point. The grip sizes are different between the two.
Yeah.
And that's, and one thing I'd like to preface by saying, no one can build a paddle for everybody, right? People have different likes. They have different hand sizes. They have different desires from a paddle. Some people like playing more of a soft game, a drop game. Some people like a more of a power game. So I understand that there's different paddles for different people. But what we did with the Pro Shop is that we had a 4 3/8 size grip, which is circumference around. Okay, so it's 4 3/8, which is a pretty good size for people. I would say maybe 5'8", 5'7", and 5'8", and higher, or people who like a sturdy grip. What we tested is that most people who are on this under 5'8" prefer this size grip, which is about 4 1/4. Now, it's one of these things where I think that's why a lot of companies offer customizing different paddle, circumferences when you order them. Certain companies will say, hey, what size grip do you want? Because the grip it's very hard to make a grip smaller, meaning it's almost impossible. Like if this grip felt too big for you, you can't make this thinner. But this grip here, if you wanted one a little thicker, you could add an extra grip or an over grip. So it's easier to make this, expand this grip. So we kind of designed this so that it would appeal to the most people possible, and then you could expand it from there. But
so just to clarify for everybody, you're showing us these different paddles, but the Pro-Am series has the smaller grip.
Yeah, the Pro-Am series has a bigger grip. Right. But you could always make a grip bigger by wrapping it in an over grip. So we just tried to make, even though they have, it's the same technology, they do have different size grips because we found more people who were playing with the Pro model, were coming from a tennis background, even though you didn't. I'm glad you liked it, even without the tennis background. But and they seem to be more comfortable with the larger size grip, which is more in line with a tennis racket, let's say, a tennis racket size. But some other things about the paddle that we thought were pretty good is, when we adhere the edge guard around the edges, a complaint we hear all the time is that these edges come off after hard play, after scraping on the ground. These get loose on paddles and they fall off. We use a 3,700 PSI adhesive to put this product on, and it results in a very strong bond between your core and your edge guard, and it gives a long-lasting longevity to the paddle. So we've noticed that we're getting a lot more durability out of these paddles because these edges aren't coming apart as quickly and as often as other paddles do. So we really spent a lot of time trying to make sure the product we built would stand the test of time. This is not a 2-month paddle. This could be something you use for 6 to 12 months, and it should not break down and degrade on you. You should be able to use this for 6 to 12 months. A lot of those other paddles, they after about 2 to 3 months, they're going to lose their texture, they're going to lose their grit, and they might have edges falling apart. So we really tried to focus in on building a quality product that will last a long time.
Yeah, it sounds like it and it feels like it. And like Uncle mentioned, it does have a really cool design on it. You've got two different series or two different lines of the Pro Series, the Pro Am Series, but both of them, they look so great and so sleek. Who was in charge of coming up with these designs?
Yeah, that's a great question. As a smaller company, we do not have an in-house design team. I found a designer who worked for other brands such as Nike and Converse and some other clothing companies locally here in the LA area. And she decided to take this on as an independent contractor and came up with these design looks and for us. So, we got a professionally designed line on from someone who's worked with some of the biggest brands in the industry. So we felt very good about the different designs and the different colors and the palettes that they use and the fonts too.
My wife doesn't usually she's not a pickleball player. She doesn't usually mention too much about the paddles that I have or anything like that. But the Pro Am series that you sent me in the purple, she goes, "Oh, that is so pretty." she thought like that was the perfect color paddle for her. Like if she ever plays pickleball with me, I know she's gonna try to
She's
steal
gonna
that one
pick
from
that
me.
one for sure.
Yeah, it's so funny. Every my two daughters, they've both picked their paddle that they fell in love with. Now my wife's picked her paddle that she's fallen in love with.
Well, yeah, I'm glad it's a 5 shots paddle.
It is. So what's coming up with 5 shots? What's the future look like?
Right. Well, we're trying to sell paddles, right? So the question is, how do you sell paddles in such a crowded space? How do you carve out a niche for yourself? How do you sell it? Where do you sell it? How do you advertise it? So we sort of have a 3-pronged approach. One of them is going to be Amazon. Amazon is a juggernaut in the space of selling products around the world. There is no denying that. Recently, we just got up and running on Amazon, and I am learning how to sell on Amazon. It's quite an experience. It's quite an eye-opening experience. Their advertising model is a pay-per-click model, which means you set up a daily budget, and you tell them what products you want to advertise and what keywords you want to zero in on. Like I might zero in on pickleball paddles made in the USA, pickleball paddle set made in the USA. So you pick these keywords, and then there's a little bid button, a little bid range for how much you want to pay if someone types that in their search bar for your ad to appear, or your impression, they call it, to appear on that page. These could range anywhere from $2 to $5 per click. So as I'm learning, you set up a $50, $100 daily budget, and you're paying $5 for someone just to click on your impression. That's not buy the product. That's to just click on the impression.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you could really go through a large budget of people just clicking on that sponsored impression and not even making a purchase. And I think that's why I see there's a lot of paddles on Amazon, don't get me wrong, but a lot of startup companies, I think, are avoiding Amazon for the fact of the matter is it's very expensive to advertise your product on Amazon if you're going to pay $5 for every time someone clicks on your impression. And that's not to buy it. That's just to look at it. And you might need 20 people to click or 40 people to click before you get one purchase. So you might spend a couple $100 on advertising to make one sale. And then Amazon has their fees that go along with that down the road. You know, they usually take about 15% commission on sporting goods. Then if you do fulfilled by Amazon, where they do the prime shipping, that's another $7 to $10. So I think you can see that the only people getting rich here are Amazon.
I did not know any of that. That's really insightful.
Yeah, it's a process. It's an eye opener. You know, I bet I could spend the whole hour on a podcast just explaining how Amazon works. But that's a whole other issue. But we are trying. You know, I'm doing it. You know, we're all hopeful for that snowball effect. You know, at some point where you don't have to advertise every day, that you move up in the rankings, you move up on the pages, so that hopefully you don't have to advertise so much and you get organic clicks and organic sales. But that could be a very expensive way to go. But so you asked, that's the first thing we're doing. The second thing I'm doing is we've contacted a lot of indoor pickleball facilities, and we're sending out these paddles as demos so that people could actually demo them in the indoor facilities. And then if it has a good reception, talk to the pro shops about getting set up in the pro shops and a lot of these facilities. Most of them get calls all the time from new paddle companies, right? There's probably 100 or 100 indoor facilities that have mass memberships around the country, 5 or 6 that have multiple locations. They're getting bombarded with calls from new startup paddle companies saying, can you put my paddle in the pro shop? So that's a long road to go down too. You got to prove yourself. You got to earn your space on the shelf. And how do you do that? Well, you give them demo paddles, you have them try it, you have their members try it. And if they feel that it's good enough to make it on the wall in the pro shop, then maybe they'll invite you to do it. So we're going that route too. The third route is social media, where, we've been doing a lot of outreach on social media. More than welcome to do podcasts, more than welcome to talk to anyone who will listen about how we make these, how we manufacture them, the story behind them. So there's that outreach on the local level. There's social media, trying to grow it that way. And soon we'll do advertising on social media. We haven't done that yet. And Amazon. If there's another way, please, Uncle, tell me.
We'll have to talk. That's another podcast right there.
Yeah, but
you'll have to come on my business podcast for that one.
Hey, that's all right. So so that's the goal. The goal is to sell product at this point and to get it out there, and to get the product in the hands of players.
That's awesome. And we hope the best for you and your pickleball paddle line. For any of our listeners who are interested in purchasing one, where is the best place for them to go right now? Well,
thanks for asking, but the website is the easiest way. Just go to 5shotspickleball.com, or you could go to Amazon, and from Amazon, just type in 5 shots and they'll auto-populate. You could choose one and be at your door in 2 days.
And if you click it, buy it.
Don't.
As much as I respect Mr. Bezos for everything that he does, let's just go to 5shotspickleball.com and buy direct, and let's take care of Josh.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show today and educating all of our listeners about 5 Shots Pickleball. You got great paddles. I can't wait to endorse you and, hopefully grow the market for your paddles.
Right. I appreciate that. We're putting people in this country to work. We have manufacturers throughout the United States and employees that are putting this together and assembling it and shipping it. So, everything we do here is really with the goal of not only building a company, but building manufacturing in this country. So it's a good, noble cause. So please buy the product.
All right. Well, thank you again. And thank you, all of you listening, for joining us at Third Shot, where Bridgie and I will continue to share our pickleball journey. A special thanks to Josh for joining us today and sharing all the great paddles that 5 Shots has to offer. Check out their website at 5shotspickleball.com. That's the number 5 shotspickleball.com, or on Instagram at the number 5shots_pickleball. You can support this show by subscribing, and we promise to have more amazing guests just like Josh in future episodes. So let's continue to share our enjoyment for the game and grow the pickleball community. See you next time on Third Shot Podcast.